patience with a sense of urgency. So I have the arrow on here because people usually lack patience or they lack urgency, and we need to identify which one.
Welcome back to the show. I am your host, Remington Ramsey, and today my guest is Hank Avink, which, you know, is kind of like one of those words where you could have just been like Hank Avink. Is that how people just like make it one word?
It happens always. You know, I went by John the first 19 years of my life, and one of the best marketing moves I ever did was change my name to Hank.
Ah, okay. Well, so we'll stick with Hank. Hank is in. There really is a Kalamazoo, and
there really is.
And Hank is there. And today we're going to talk about his life's journey through real estate and coaching, among other things. He is a head coach for EXP. He's number 72 of 88,000 people, which is pretty phenomenal. And the growth of EXP and for and people like you making that happen is pretty impressive. So congrats on your success.
Thanks. It's been a fun journey being able to help people along the way.
Well, I've got a lot of notes here, Hank, but where I'd like to start is selfishly is something that I'm pretty passionate about, which is rental properties. It says here that by the age of 22, you had 42 rental properties. I mean, you got to start when you're 13 to get those numbers, huh?
No, what happened was I played hockey and we won a national championship. And as a captain of the team, the first game I was knocked out cold. So when I lifted the cup, I was in my street clothes and we were getting off the plane of the tarmac, and I put the bag on my shoulder, and the head coach goes, "Guess you didn't need that." And I knew I was kind of at the end of the rope when it came to my career. So I went home and I bought my first property April 1st, 1998. And I don't know if you know of Carlton Sheets, the infomercial guy.
Yeah,
I was on his late night TV show.
For what product?
For representing no money down. So literally I started with $1,000 with my dad, who was my business partner. We both threw in $1,000. So we had $2,000 and we went and bought all those rental properties only to have a commercial note call due on me. And our foundation was like a house of cards. And unfortunately in 2006, everything started tightening up before 2008 hit, and ended up going bankrupt. And I tell you what, to go through all that in your 20s was an unbelievable lessons and experience.
When so you lost everything, and I think it's safe to say you're on the other end of that coin now. I mean, you've built back a nice lifestyle for yourself. What is that like? What do you tell yourself? You know, I used to mentor high school kids in a group setting, and I remember asking them a question to the effect of, what are things that get you down and derail you? And all the athletes in the room talked extensively about injury. They talked about how like it was almost like their identity was wrapped up into this one sport, this one thing, and the devastation of the industry. So you go from a head injury, playing junior hockey, straight into a lot of success initially, only to be followed by more devastation with bankruptcy. How does a 20-something-year-old handle that?
Well, if I'm being honest, and you said this was PG-13, I had a gun in my mouth and almost didn't finish, like almost didn't move forward. It was that tough. And thankfully that I chose not to go that route. And that's when I ultimately decided to file bankruptcy. And the nice thing about hitting rock bottom is you've hit the bottom, and there's only way to go is to go up. So, fortunately I look at having gone through that, having gone through a bankruptcy, and then we had a child that had open heart surgery at 6 days old. Man. So I know what bad days are.
Yeah.
And when you've had a child going through open heart surgery at 6 days old, and everything that you thought was important to you no longer matters, and you have the perspective and the lenses of, having a gun in your mouth and having your son go into open heart surgery, and you look at what I have to do on a daily basis to go win, it's like, good God, I've had bad days. Like these days are easy.
Yeah, no doubt. That perspective keeps coming up on this show. Well, what happened after that? Your parents owned a funeral home. You grew up in a small town, right?
Yeah.
I got a quote from me. I got a lot of funny quotes that Bobby sent over to me. It said, "Business was dead." Is that your is that your attempt at humor for
People were dying to get in.
Not to be morbid, but I have got to feel like that is a recession-proof business there.
Well, and at the end of the day, here's the challenge I had with the business model. I was like, how do you go prospect for it? And I didn't necessarily like being the passive lead generator. Like, hey, Remington, how long do you think you have? Like, that was the only big problem that I saw in the business model. Was also I did one thing I'm really proud about my parents was they would oftentimes talk people out of stuff in their time of need. Like, hey, you don't really need
I was going to ask you that because I was just talking to my dad about this the other day, because it's just like, it is such a, they're literally emotionally just pulling the trigger on so many decisions. I was talking to him about when his father passed and they had to liquidate his auto shop and taking things cents out of the dollar, selling them back. And you're emotional. You don't want these things anymore. So you're getting rid of them. So you're just selling houses for half the cost because you want to get out of the house. So the fact that your parent, I mean, that's a cool thing. That's the first thing you said, is you're proud of your parents for not taking advantage of people in a time of need.
Yeah, it's huge. And yet it also made a struggle growing up because we were in a small town and only so many people pass away. And when you're not upselling people, and, we look at what the average value of a client is, they were doing what actually hurt them. So, growing up in a small business and a funeral home like that, it was such a unique experience that I think it's definitely helped me get to where I am today.
What were some of the lessons that you learned when you were helping in that helped you for business in the future?
One of them was, at the end of the day, we didn't have a paycheck coming in every 30 days. So really understanding cash flow and understanding, how important money can be when you don't have it. I don't do anything for money now. I make a lot of money. However, if you have problems that can be solved by money, you really don't have any problems. And so really understanding the importance of picking an opportunity that has the opportunity to be what you want it to be. So for example, in the funeral home, when I looked at the number of people that died and the percentage of businesses that I'd have to get in order to make the sort of lifestyle that I wanted, the math just didn't work. And I'm not sure if people are watching this, but I have on my forearm math versus drama. And I think so many times what agents do is they're not set up to win from the beginning because the math doesn't work on what they wanted to accomplish. And I think that's my superpower, is really helping people understand, is what they're trying to do even mathematically possible? Or are they trying to, some of my analogies aren't appropriate.
Yeah. Well, could you give me an example of that, math versus drama? So like, give me an example maybe of someone you've coached recently in the last couple of weeks where the math didn't add up to what they were trying to accomplish, or maybe someone who you did figure it out.
Well, let's look at it. So let's say that someone is a successful real estate agent. They also have a family, they have kids, and they don't want to, just be married to the business. But in order to do what they want to do, they think that they need to go sell 100 houses a year. Okay. Well, how many hours do you want to work? And we know on average, we're looking at, let's just use 2,000 as the example. Okay. Do you go to your closings? Well, if you go to your closings, and you have 100 closings and each closing is 2 hours, right there is 200 hours of the 2,000 hours. Very quickly, when you look at all the things that they do in order to get them to a referral-based business, going to closings, helping with inspections, the math doesn't work for them to do 100 transactions, not the way that they're doing it.
So then you work backwards at that point once you've identified that and ask them what really is important to them, and then you help them outsource, I'm assuming?
Yeah, outsource, or maybe you need to look at a different opportunity. So for example, our net life income is 360 grand a year. As long as I make 360 grand a year, we can accomplish everything that we want to accomplish. So what happens is when, for example, when most real estate agents get started, they're working with buyers. Well, you can't work with as many buyers as you can sellers, right? Mm-hmm. So at some point you stop working with as many buyers and you start working with more sellers. So you end up working with the same amount of clients, but you net more money.
Yep.
So at some point you want to start looking at like recurring income or leveraged income. And so you're not always having more as the answer. Most real estate agents are celebrated by doing more. They're not celebrated by doing less. So for example, I'm in a spot now with other income streams that I have where I don't have to do any work and we'll make over that 360 grand a year. Now that happens because I gave up transactional income for leveraged income and recurring income, which ends up becoming a math equation. I mean, how many retirement parties have you been to for a real estate agent? It just doesn't happen, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
what are they doing once they get that transactional income? Do they raise their lifestyle, or do they start buying investment properties or doing other things to make revenue outside of trading dollars for hours?
Man, that makes a lot of sense. Do you feel like spending your beginnings in a funeral home gave you perspective of what people want to accomplish by the end of their life by seeing what so many people did accomplish? I mean, I'm guessing you heard some of the
or didn't
eulogies.
accomplish.
Right.
What blew me away? How many times families would be putting credit cards together just to have enough of a balance to be able to pay a funeral bill of $1,000.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought to myself, how is it that someone gets to the end of their life and they don't have a pot big enough to actually pay for their own end of life services, let alone the kids that they now brought along don't have the money to do it? And I thought to myself, how do you have that much money filter through you through a lifetime where at the end you can't even dispose of yourself on your own or the people that you've helped facilitate in this world together do that? And then I've seen other people where there's a line around the block to go see them. You got to see which one did you want to be? What choices did they make? What did they do differently? So yeah, it gave you a lot of perspective on how you might have wanted to show up in the years coming forward.
Do you think everyone is capable of being financially sound? Do you think, I'm not saying do great things. I'm not asking, is everyone capable of becoming Taylor Swift? What I'm asking is everyone in this lifetime capable of making decisions that will allow them to be financially fit where they can pay that bill you're talking about?
So everyone is a broad stroke. So let's at least be at a level of competence where they can read and write and have basic emotional intelligence. Fair?
Sure. Yeah.
If you have basic emotional intelligence and you have a general skill set, 100% you can. 100% I believe that you can. Now, do some people get to start the race closer to the finish line? 100% believe that too. And are there certain privileges that some of us have? Yes. But at the end of the day, I think everybody has the opportunity. Now, whether or not they're going to fight through whatever adversities they have, because we all have them. I think one of the biggest problems that people have is to pretend that you're not supposed to have problems. And I think some people have it too easy, so they get comfortable and they've never gone through something like a bankruptcy.
Sure.
So I think sometimes people need harder stuff to actually go win at a higher level.
What happened, to get back to your story? What happened immediately after the bankruptcy? That was rock bottom. And rock bottom's right before bankruptcy, I'm guessing. Bankruptcy is kind of a relief from the rock bottom. Yeah. And I'm a little ignorant on what happens to that. I mean, in short, can you share with us like what happens in a bankruptcy? What does that do to your assets? What does that do to your credit?
Yeah, I mean, I had probably the worst credit score you could ever find. And when I filed, my credit score was fine, but I could see what was happening. So I went where there was no credit score anymore. So there was no borrowing money. There was no getting my head out, the shame and the judgment, because it was a local bank that did it to me. So they put my name in the paper, and everybody snarked at me. And what it did was they
put your name in the paper for what reason? What?
Oh, they said, here's what the banker said to me. And again, this is my story, and it was a trauma-filled time. So he goes, we were talking with a mediator, and he goes, I go, hey man, like, why don't we work together? I put 20% down. We can sell the properties, and I think I'll owe you about $100,000. Give me a personal note and I'll pay you. I'm not sure when, but it's $100,000. I can pay you. And he said this, he goes, your ego's too big. You'll figure it out. We're going to bury you in the paper, and we're going to have everybody know what a failure you are.
Wow. Why? What is his deal? What?
I think it was some young banker trying to like flex on me. But at the end of the day, like, I had 42 rental properties. They changed the laws where you could only have 10. So no one in their right mind was going to touch me or remortgage my 5-year balloon. Again, my fault. I should have never gotten a loan that had a balloon or they could call it due.
Sure. So you're saying the law changed to where you could only own 10 on credit?
On mortgages,
on loan. I mean, so is that a Michigan law or is that a federal law?
No, it's across the board. You can't have more than 10 residential mortgages in your name. Once you get over 10, it turns into commercial paper. I had like 30 plus residential mortgages in my name. What bank was going to touch me in '06 when everything's falling apart? No one.
Yeah. So what happened after that?
So thankfully I met my wife, and I remember sitting in her house and I just started bawling, and she's like, "What's wrong?" I go, I was living on a lake at the time. Everything looked like it was awesome. She goes, "What's wrong with you?" I go, "Oh my gosh, I've been lying to you." And she's like, "Are you sleeping around on me? We've been going out that long." So I go, "No, I'm going bankrupt." She goes, and my wife doesn't swear.
Yeah.
And she swore at me and said, "Blank you, if you think I'm with you for your money, you don't know who I am."
Yeah.
And it was at that moment where it's like, okay, time to double down and just go fix it. So I have another tattoo right here that says "fix it," because at the end of the day, we're all going to have problems, and you can either sit there in them, or you can identify what they are and then just go fix it. And so I went into mortgages thinking, gosh, why don't I go help people do this the right way? And then I started getting in mortgages, and I was really successful at loaning people money because I was more coaching them on how to do this the right way. Because my question was, who in their right mind would give a 22-year-old 30 plus mortgages when he barely has hair on his chest? Like, it's not a
The
good
same
equation.
people that are giving student loans on a regular basis to sorry, I get it. I get off track sometimes.
Well, it's true. Like, I wasn't emotionally like in a good place where I could handle that sort of leverage.
Volume, yeah. So you got immediately into mortgages, and you helped from the other end of the aisle. Helped people with that. Eventually found real estate. You've been with your wife how long?
We're going on 19 years in October, and had our ups and downs, years of marriage therapy, and super grateful and lucky. I don't know anybody who has a better marriage than us. And yet I still quit drinking last June because I wanted to have the next level of relationship. And it's pretty awesome.
Tell me about that. You made the decision that alcohol was standing in the way of that?
Well, so there's three reasons why I did it. The first one was I wanted a better relationship with my wife, and we've got 5 kids under our house right now. We've got 2 girls from Azerbaijan that we took in, and we're helping them get on their feet. And when I looked at it, there's a Hank that drinks for the next year, and there's a Hank that doesn't. Which one gives me a better outcome? Well, not drinking, obviously. My father-in-law, who was like a best friend to me, just entered hospice, and grief was new to me. And I don't know if you've ever dealt with heavy grief. It's an emotion that I just wasn't equipped to handle. And I saw a lot of people and the stories going through it, they numb themselves. And then the third one was, in our industry, we have a lot of alcoholics. And the event culture around our industry is, I think people go and they drink. And I've seen too many people get in situations that if they were sober, would have turned out differently. So It was kind of like a 3-prong approach as to why I did a year-long experiment. And it's gone so well that I've just chosen not to pick it back up.
You're the kind of guy that is strong in your convictions to the point where you wear it on quite literally on your body with your tattoos. I'm looking at a hat right now that's got numbers that I don't know the significance of. What is 50?
It's also tattooed on my wrist.
Oh man. All right.
So we're a good example. We were Facebook friends, and the 50 is becoming Facebook friends. And I reached out to you and I said something along the lines of, are we victims of drive-by friending? And what that was, it's the equivalent of a 20. There was an energy exchange there, right? It was a handshake where I think we both got the energy where, hey, you're not a threat. You're not like there was an energy exchange, but it wasn't like, oh my gosh, let's go be besties, right? Sure. The goal is to have 50 people a day see me, have 20 where I get an energy exchange, which is like a handshake, where I can enter into 5 conversations, where through 5 conversations, I want to connect with one human being where we can remember where we were when we had the conversation.
Wow. And is this new people, or is this people in your sphere already?
Yes. Here's what it is. It's the math, because a lot of the agents that I coached, we'd get to like around December and we'd be like, it was a great year, but how did we do that? Or people would be like, hey, can I come shadow you? And we're thinking to ourselves, you can come shadow, but I don't realize what I'm doing. And we look back and we connect the dots. And there was a theme of us getting out there enough where people saw us. And when they saw us, we would have conversations, and not everybody liked us, but everybody knew what we did. Where if we had one powerful conversation a day, Remington, how many people do you think you know? 500, 1,000 that you have
Yeah, I
influence
mean,
over?
I've got 3,000 Facebook now. How many of them do I personally know? I don't know, but it's a lot.
But here's the thing is, after you and I have had a conversation, if you believe that I could help someone that you care about, there's a good chance that you'd go and put him in a headlock and say, hey, I know Hank's a little much. He probably cusses too much, but I think you need to connect with this dude. And if I get a connection, would you be open to him? That's what I'm looking for, because if I can get to know you as a human being, you have influence over 100, 200, 300 people, where now I get to be brought in on that relational capital and they meet you right where you're at. So I get to enter the relationship based on the relationship that you have. And then what you need to do is just not screw it up.
So how much time do you focus on each? The numbers are 50, 20, 5, and 1 for those listening to this and not watching. They can't see his hat. Yeah. So how active are you with the 50 versus the 20, versus the 1? Like, are you actively pursuing the 50 knowing that the 25 and 1 will just happen from that? Or are you actively pursuing each number?
So I'm going to answer the question from when I help people start doing it. It's, and the 4 quadrants where you've got an unconscious incompetence where people just aren't aware. So when people get to a conscious incompetence, it might take them 3 or 4 hours a day to get through the 50, 25, 1 because we're tracking it, right? It's like I'm teaching my 27-year-old immigrant child how to drive. Do you know how much conscious awareness I have around what it takes to drive now? Because she's incompetent when it comes to driving. Now we're moving her into a conscious competence, and it takes less time and less fear. Now with 50, 25, 1, I'm in an unconscious competence. So I do it throughout my day without even thinking about it. But we have math around it so that we know that if we have the right people on the bus, if we're doing 50, 25, 1, we'll be able to reach any goal. And I think the key concept of this is, are you clear on what your goal is? And if we go back to the rental properties, the team that I had to build to 42 rental properties by the age of 22 was completely different than the team that I had to go win a national championship. And I think one of the biggest challenges that people have is they have a great team, but not the right team for the goal and the life that they're going after. And 50, 25, 1 is used to sort through your key relationships to realign them to be able to help you accomplish what you want to accomplish mathematically. And did I go too deep on that and get too far in the weeds?
No, I'm just trying to remember things that we talked about ahead of the podcast that kind of got you to this point. I think you're a big reader. You mentioned a book, Buying Back Time. It feels like you put together a lot of these concepts through what you've read, studied, and life experiences. Tell me about all the stuff on the back of your wall that it seems like these are your core values when it comes to coaching people.
Yep. So what happened was in 2016, when I left MAPS and Bold Coaching with Keller Williams, which is a great organization, I have massive gratitude for what they've represented in my life. What I realized was I didn't have my own standards and principles and coaching materials. So I just started coaching people. And through coaching people, we got those standards and principles. One of is patience with a sense of urgency. So I have the arrow on here because people usually lack patience or they lack urgency, and we need to identify which one. An arrow is used for either hunting or for war. And anytime you're looking to go to the next level, you got to draw the arrow back. And when it shoots forward, it's messy. And so the patience with a sense of urgency is kind of my mantra is I've always liked patience. So I've always wanted to do things quickly. So around me, what I find is most of us just need to be more consistent, but consistent isn't sexy and it's not exciting.
Yeah.
So the 50, 25, 1.
Do you have a turtle on you too, or is that coming?
No, I don't. Not yet.
Do you have one tattoo artist, or have you gotten them from other artists?
No, it all depends on the tattoo, but like my success code, which is right here. This is how I've built every single business model that we've done, because it starts with skill set. We know that the first 20 hours learning a topic, you'll learn more in the first 20 hours than what you will in the next 500. But if you have 500 hours into a certain subject, you'll be one of the top people within the field. So if you look at this, you got skill set, time on task, and you're experimenting till you get a victory. Once you get victory, you get confidence. So what we do is any new success code that we do, we need time on task. So Remington, I've documented every single hour that I've worked since 2016. If you tell me a year, a month, and a day, I can tell you what I've done every hour on the hour.
Wow.
And so my life and my income has now become a math equation based on, if I do this, then this will happen.
Yeah. Do you do that through logging or like through your calendar, or what is that? How do you?
So one of my old mentors used to say, if it's not in your schedule, it doesn't exist. And so everything that I do, I schedule every hour on the hour, and then I schedule it. And my goal is every hour be serving another human being. We were talking about the podcast, and literally you asked what I want out of this, and I just want to serve. Because if I show up and I serve a human being, it's the law of reciprocity, right? There's no way that I could serve 40 hours a week or 30 hours a week and not at the end of the year reach my goals. Because if you help enough people get what they want, you'll get everything that you want. So what I do is I hold my hours accountable for the outcomes that I'm looking for, and I only volunteer 10% of my time.
Who said that? Zig Ziglar or Dale Carnegie? Or am I off?
There's nothing new under the sun, right? I'm sure you could trace it back to the Bible in some way, shape,
Moses.
or form, but Zig Ziglar is where I heard it.
Yeah. Moses or Abraham Lincoln are the two go-tos.
Right.
Well, what's next for you then, Hank? You've got one thing we didn't get to that that I always find fascinating is people who've completed Ironman. That's is that a consistent thing for you? Do you just do one? Is one enough?
No, it was the dumbest thing I've ever done. It was the reality was my dad did a bunch, and if you've ever experienced where people cross the finish line in an Ironman, it's so inspirational. Now, here's a blind spot for me. I've always been good enough to just pull things off, and I knew I couldn't fake an Ironman. And I knew the one thing that I was lacking in my world was consistency and doing something. So my training regimen for an Ironman wasn't to like go crush it. It was, what is the least amount of training that I can do consistently where I don't kill myself? Because I'm so competitive, where if that, I don't know if I can say that fat guy passes me, where my ego gets in and I have a heart attack because I let my ego get in the way. The Ironman just represented where if you have time on task over time, you can accomplish anything. But once I did it, what I realized was it's more than what you need to do. It's not good on your knees. I'm watching my dad right now with neuropathy and all the challenges that he's dealing with. So once I reached that crest, here was the challenge. I went so extreme, I didn't want to work out as much.
Sure. It's kind of like people who, join a fad diet and lose it all and then gain twice as much back.
Yep. So
what do you feel like is an appropriate amount? Like if Ironman's too much, in your opinion, are marathons too much, or are marathons okay? Like on the human body, what's a good metric, I guess?
So here's one of my things is I always answer yes like this. And if you can't see, I'm shaking my head no, because I would need more context. Yet for me, I have kids that are active, and I want to be able to do whatever I do and be able to enjoy it. So for example, 20 minutes a day on the Peloton 4 days a week allows me to go ski snowbird black diamonds for 3 days straight and not be fried. Like I can take as many runs as I want and the place shuts down before I'm done in 3 feet of powder. That to me is the level of fitness that I want to be at, where I can go play hockey and be the, leading scorer for assists at 45 years old because I'm at a certain level of physical fitness, but I don't need to be the stud that has the six pack because I'm taking too much time away from my business or family, other things that are going on.
So that's a good answer. That's a better answer than even what I was asking, but I'm just curious, do you think there's you're saying, I thought you were saying like Ironman really isn't good for anyone, right? Like if your dad's, I mean, now this is your own experience, but like I've heard that before, where it's just like at some point this is too much. Like,
well, I think it's selfish. If you look at the Ironman, if you look at the number of hours that it takes to train for an Ironman, what are you not doing during that time?
Yeah,
I mean,
unless you're a career Ironman,
I don't think the highest and best use for me is sitting on a bike for 7 hours on a Sunday.
Yeah.
And then I'm so wiped out by the time I get home that I can't play with my kids because I'm just exhausted because I had to get my 100-mile ride in. Now, but here's the thing is in my season of my life, that's a season that I'm in. But for other people, they love doing it, and more power to them.
Sure. I'd like to we'll do a part 2 with an avid Ironman person that, can't get enough of it. And we'll go head to head.
Well, and here's what I would like to see is I'll be their biggest supporter as long as there is congruency on what they're saying is important to them, and there's not other things suffering because of it. Because
no doubt.
That's where if you want to get on my bad side, say one thing like your family's important, but then have your actions speak louder, and then not acknowledge the fact that your actions are speaking louder than your words based on your activities, because oftentimes there's an incongruency. And I think that's where my superpower is really helping people get clear on what they're saying and what they want, and then having them line up their activities with what they're actually wanting.
Yeah, and that's a cool superpower to have, because I feel like there's a lot of people who might have blinders on and not actually understand where their life is headed based on what they're doing, because they're told, hey, to get this, you need to do this. And they're not seeing what is suffering because of that. Yeah, we're out of time, but I would.
Bummer. I had a great example too, but
you know what? Let's do it so we don't tease people. Give me the example.
Well, I just got off a coaching call, and I think a common sense math. And the nice thing about me not having anybody to answer to, I'm just my own little coaching company, was there was a guy, he has a 3-year-old, his wife's pregnant, and he's starting to win in work, and he's been married 6 years. He's an affair waiting to happen. And the reality is when you're sitting outside of out of the fishbowl, you can see what's going on. And I was able to lay out to him, I was like, hey man, are these things going on? Are these things going on? Are these things going on? And if you're not careful, I've met a lot of good people who have done bad things. And here's what's around the corner if you're not careful. He's like, oh my gosh, dude, I didn't even see that coming. Now, do I think this particular client was going to go have an affair? No. However, I've known some really good people in my life that put themselves in positions where next thing you know, they're that guy.
Mm-hmm.
And I think one of the things that is so awesome about being a coach is you get to be able to take the mathematical equation from asking people the right questions and see what's likely to come out when you have certain ingredients. What's the cake going to look like when it comes out of the oven? And when you're constantly working on people's recipes, which is their life, you get pretty good at predicting what's going to be the outcome. And I mean, it's a blessing, and it can also be a curse, because you can see directions that people are going down. Like buyback time, I got a gentleman sitting in here with me right now, and we're making these small little commitments where, hey, 1 year from now, we want to make sure we're right in the right path, because if we go the opposite direction, it can make a world of difference. So hopefully that made sense and it was worth prolonging. If not, my apologies.
Well, I'm excited to see the tattoo that came out of this conversation, Hank. You've been a fantastic guest, and more power to you for exposing weaknesses in your own life and making them stronger, and then helping others do the same. That has been Hank Avink, and if you want to say it quickly, it's more fun. Hank Avink. And hopefully he finds you on Facebook for a drive-by friending. Until then, this has been the Real Producers Podcast. We'll see you next time. Thanks, Hank.